My name is Michelle Mott, and I am delighted to have you guys join us for our first 2018 webinar. This month's topic is strategic planning to recharge and focus your leaders, and we can't think of a better time to think about that topic as it relates to your business. So in case you are just joining us for the first time in this series, we want to make sure that you're maximizing your use of this technology. There is a feature on the middle top of your screen that you can zoom in or zoom out and see as large of the screen or the display as possible, which is the content viewer. And then off to the right-hand side, you'll see some panels where you can take a look at the participants, and then we're going to also ask that you use the chat box area. This is a way that you can type in any question you would like to ask of me, or you could also use it to respond to some of the questions that I'm asking. And if you would, once you do a send to, change it to host and presenter, and then both Dana and I can respond or read out your notes, and then after you type in your message, you hit send. Let me see if I can do this correctly. It's hard for me to talk and do it at the same time. I'll send it out to all attendees, and voila, there's your message. If you aren't familiar with the Inspiring Solutions, we have been providing organizational design and talent development for over 25 years. This month, we're going to be focusing in on strategic planning, but we also do leadership development and employee engagement through a variety of different training opportunities. For those of you who also do this within your organization, we also have a volume of resources that you can use for talent development, things like books, videos, e-learning tools, and online assessments. This just in, we have our shipment of new catalogs waiting to be opened. In fact, they just arrived yesterday, and I want to do a shout out to Dana, who did a great job of updating this catalog that has all of our products and programs for talent development available. So if you'd like, put on your evaluation, and we'll be happy to mail you one or two or however many you'd like to have. Or you could simply go to our website, inspiringsolutions.com, and download your own version of it. So the purpose of this hour, or each webinar, we try to deliver some monthly motivation to organizations. And many of you have told us that you're using this as a great opportunity to gather folks around a training room or in a boardroom and share this knowledge with multiple folks. We do it twice each month, same topic, and to give you exposure to one of our programs or products. So this particular webinar, we're going to explain the purpose and benefits of strategic planning. I'm going to walk and talk you through the 10 steps to complete in the planning process and how to get started. So whether you've done strategic planning before or not, what are some of the first things that you need to do to gather up the troops or gather up the resources for planning a strategic planning pro-treat. And you'll notice there that I refer to it as the event itself as a pro-treat, not a retreat. It's my coin term to indicate that this is a proactive approach to planning your future success. Given to you in the instructions for this webinar are 3 resources that we're going to be using and referring to. The first is the handout that contains a lot of content and places for you to take notes as we go through our webinar this hour. There's also a strategic planning program description, which describes kind of an overview if you're interested in learning more about how to bring this to your organization. And then there's also a webinar flyer that announces our upcoming webinars. After you complete the survey, when you log out after the end of this hour, you will be asked to fill out a survey. And please give us your feedback, comments, suggestions for future topics. As a follow-up, Dana will be sending to you not only the email with the recorded webinar, but she'll also be sending to you a program description for the actual pro treat for you to use or make a decision from. As I mentioned, one of the handouts is the webinar flyer, so I encourage you again to go out and register for upcoming webinars. Pass the schedule along to your coworkers, friends, clients, family members. We just are really appreciating such loyal following, as well as you promoting it and sharing the opportunity with other folks to join us. So to get started, I've got an opening quote from Alan Lakin, who wrote a time management book about gaining control of your time and your life. And that is about planning. Planning is the bringing the future into the present so that you can do something about it now. And I really believe that this is a great time of year as the new year launches to be thinking about strategic planning. So what is it? It's a proactive process, not reactive, to assess your current condition, determine your desired future state, and then what are the steps or actions to take to achieve that future. And it's relevant whether you're a large organization. I've done it for organizations that have multiple sites or locations. I've done it for small businesses. As a business owner myself, we continue to do it on an annual basis. In fact, I just finished up the agenda for our strategic planning retreat that will be held February 9th. We always wait until after all of our year-end reports are finished. And maybe if some of you are department heads or leaders and want to do it for your department, I've done it for an HR team that wanted to get a better understanding of their role or their purpose. So some of the terminology might differ, but the outcome gives clarity, focus, and energy to your team. Now, you may not have done any strategic planning, but I am curious, in what ways do you think vacation planning is like strategic planning? What are some of the questions that you have to ask and answer before, during, and after both vacation planning and strategic planning? Well, the common questions are, where are we now? Where are we going? How do we get there? And how are we doing? And you see that this is an ongoing process. You never really finish strategic planning because as a business, it needs to evolve and continue to grow and nurture for future success. And I believe, whether you're vacation planning or strategic planning, success is a journey, not a destination. Enjoy the adventure. And I really enjoy the strategic planning retreat that I do with my team. It's a great chance for me to thank the team for their hard work over the past year, learn from our victories as well as our mistakes, and continue to get re-energized and focused for the upcoming year. Some of the keys to successful implementing a strategic plan is that, first of all, it's got to be realistic and doable. Otherwise, people won't understand or believe it's possible. You can't do it alone, so you've got to get people involved and sharing the accountability for its success. I believe it's critical that you get your top-level management, leadership, board of directors involved in setting the vision because they need to be those visionaries. Along with making sure that you don't just create the plan, you schedule a time to review it, which is a great opportunity to reward success and progress along the way, and getting the right people involved in what we call team planning. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about that here in a minute. So let's take a look at the 10 steps. This illustrates that I've put together a pyramid to illustrate the steps in the 4 phases of the process. Where are we now has 4 steps. Where are we going has 3. 2 in the how do we get there, and then 1 for the ongoing question of how are we doing. And when I put this model together, I was intentional in putting it as a pyramid because as you know about the structure of a pyramid, you have to have a solid base. And I believe that when in strategic planning, you need to have a solid foundation for which to make your decisions from. So you'll see that even in this webinar, as we talk through the 4 steps, it does consume most of the time. Excuse me. So let's take a peek at the steps. If you're following along in the handout, turn to the page that walks through the steps. The first is plan to plan. Now, you might think, well, that's kind of obvious, isn't it? Well, yes and no. You know that you should go on vacation every year or take at least time off from work, but do you? Sometimes we get too busy and we don't make time. So this is an intentional step where you set aside the time to figure out when you're going to plan, where you want to have it, if it's going to be off-site or in your office, why, which might mean everything from, like this title says, recharge and refocus your leaders, or to just reflect and refocus your strategy. How you're going to do it is oftentimes one where we get involved in helping an organization to facilitate it, because I think it's hard to participate and engage yourself in the process while you're trying to manage and lead the agenda. But let's start with the who question. Who needs to be involved? I suggest that you create a planning team. This team can be 10 to 13 people, maybe more. I will say that when I've involved both senior leadership teams and board of directors, it can be a good 20 to 30 people. And I've got several techniques that I use to get everybody actively involved in contributing at small group tables. But the purpose for this team is to make sure you've got the key players who can make decisions and hold people accountable. Beyond leadership, you might get some other folks involved, such as key employees, or even get a representative from your customers. I used to do a lot of work in long-term care. I do a lot of work in healthcare, but I used to do a lot of work in long-term care, or senior care now, as it's called. And they would have a residence council. For those of you who might be familiar, it's a small group of select customers, basically, that are intending to provide ongoing feedback. So if you have an organization that can bring together some of your key customers, what a great opportunity to give them a voice and make some helpful decisions for your future success. The role of the planning team is to take a look at and analyze the data that you gather, and we're going to talk about that data towards the end. They speak not just for themselves, but for those that are not there. So they're responsible for not just expressing their own desires, but what they've heard or learned from other folks. They're responsible for giving honest evaluation or feedback as to what's working, what's not. They develop the plan as well as communicate it with others. Get other folks involved in the implementation process and monitor its progress, as well as giving ongoing feedback along the way. Again, celebrating success, as well as giving encouragement for areas that might be falling behind. And it would be that team to, again, continuously refine and update it on an annual basis. My role when asked to facilitate, I always say that I know enough to be dangerous about an organization or a team, because I want to know enough about the nature of the work or challenges to ask the right questions, but I truly want the questions to be answered by the experts. So I guide the process, get everybody involved in speaking and sharing their thoughts, keeping you focused on this agenda, and challenge you to make decisions. I think a lot of times teams or even organizations get together and share ideas, but there's never any follow-through. So I will make sure that you make decisions and hold people accountable to follow through on ideas. So let's take a look now on the second step. The second step is what's called external analysis. This is when you're taking a look at what's going on outside the organization. From a stakeholder perspective, what's going on in your market, what's happening with competition, what's going on with the government if they tend to regulate your business or industry. And then from all of that, you will summarize using the SWOT analysis. You might be familiar with that. And we don't necessarily do it in order. Strengths, weaknesses are actually done in the next step as it relates to the internal analysis. But we like to start from the outside in because so many of your decisions internally need to be reflective of what's going on outside your organization. So the first is the stakeholder analysis. So if you were to imagine, I like to facilitate using flip charts. So I'll have a flip chart, and first exercise we do will look somewhat like this on a flip chart, where we put the center in the center of the box the name of your business or department or whatever we're focusing on. And on the outside, we will list stakeholders. Stakeholders, by definition, are those individuals or organizations that have a vested interest or contributes to your success. For instance, listed here obviously are your employees. Customers is another critical stakeholder. You could have vendors, bankers, government. You could have suppliers that you use on a regular basis, all of which are critical relationships that you need to manage and monitor for the success of your business. The next part of the external analysis is to report out on what's going on in your marketplace. What's the trend? What's happening? What's technology doing to the marketplace? What's the internet doing to the marketplace? What's your geographical location doing to your business? And so all of those would be reported out or shared and presented for consideration. Another part is to learn what's going on with your competition. It's oftentimes important for maybe your market person or your sales team to identify who's out there doing the same thing that you're doing, in other words, providing the same type of product or service, as well as trying to attract the same type of customers that you would like to not only obtain or to retain. And then the third part is, what is your brand? In other words, what makes you unique? What makes you better than? And as Inspiring Solutions has evolved through the years, I would say one of our unique factors is that not only do we help our clients use resources for talent development, such as the online assessments and books or videos, but we also can help them deliver it, and we can also make recommendations for them on a customized case-by-case basis. When you take a look at your customers, drilling deeper into understanding those whom you serve in terms of what are some of their characteristics. Are they men? Are they women? What's their age? What's their demographics? What's important to them? Why do they buy from you? Are you easy to do business with? Do you provide good service or good follow-through? Does it vary per product line? And I will give you an example. As I mentioned, we not only provide products, but we also deliver programs. So for instance, I'll give you an example. In our business model, Dana primarily manages the product line. I tend to manage the program aspect of our business. So it's a different way of serving our clientele, but it allows us to specialize in what we do best. Does it vary geographically? Now, obviously, we can deliver learning not only like we're doing today electronically, but most of our products or services, or I should say our programs, are delivered when we conduct training or we conduct strategic planning on site. But that, again, indicates that we can virtually work anywhere, as long as I can get close to an airplane, bus, train, automobile. And then any other significant factors relating your customers. From that, then, we take a look at the level of risk an organization is comfortable with. And you'll see off to the left-hand side whether you're dealing with current or existing, or current or new customers. And then on the top, it indicates whether you're dealing with current or new products or services. So if you were to take a look at a strategy, that looks at improving what you're currently providing to your current customers, that is your lowest risk. So in other words, if you just commit to improving what you're currently doing, your current customers will continue doing business with you. However, you might decide, you know what, let's bring on a new product or a new program. There's a couple of new products that we have recently launched. One is a PXT Select. It's a hiring tool. And the other one is a new program that we're rolling out about conflict, confidence with conflict. And we're going to do a preview of that during next month's webinar using a new Everything Disc productive profile. So that's, again, a great way that we can add to the book of products that we can offer to our clients. However, the risk increases if we try to find and bring in new customers. We are just about to start doing work with a company in town called Equifax, and they do a line of mortgage lending approvals. And so that will be a great way for us to start work with a new client we've not worked with using our current book of products and services. And then the latest or the greatest risk would be if you were to introduce a new product or service, you could bring in a completely new book of business. And I gave the example this morning that what if we were to offer a line of shoes? Because we think shoes would bring in a new book of business. Well, it's kind of risky. We don't know. It's not new in our repertoire. We don't know that much about shoes, but it might be a good opportunity for us to explore. With that in mind, then your strategies could include growth, doing more what you're currently doing for your current customers. It could be diversification, which means bringing in new products or services. Integration says, well, let's think about maybe changing or modify the way in which we are delivering our products or services. And then I really think of the webinars as a way in which we several years back introduced integration to our clients. Turnabout says, you know what, we need to make some improvements to our current products or services because it's not working the way it should. We oftentimes will look at the way in which we deliver our programs or our programs and are constantly making improvements based on evaluations or feedback from our customers. And then retrenchment takes a look at cutting back or eliminating completely something that you're currently doing because you're not getting a good return on your investment. I will give you an example of how we have recently launched certifications. Many of you even on this call may have gone through our Attitudes in the Workplace certification that we did too last year. Moving forward, we are not going to certify people in Everything Disc because that's something that our strategic partner, Wiley, does on a regular basis. And so if we know of anybody, if any of you are interested in getting certified in any of the Everything Disc products, we'll suggest that you go to one of their scheduled certifications. And then the last future option is a combination of all or any of the above, because maybe you've decided in some cases you're ready for growth, but if you're going to grow, you're going to need to retrench or cut back. Then after that analysis is finished, you summarize with both the opportunities and threats. This then is where we would flip chart what you would or could do that would better position yourself in the marketplace, provide you with a competitive advantage, better serve your current customers, as well as prepare you for the future needs of not only your current customers, but also your prospective or new customers. You can gain that knowledge from questions that you may have completed on a pre-planning questionnaire, questions 5 and 8, and I'm going to share with you what those questions are a little bit later in this webinar. And then once we've flip charted your opportunities, we would agree upon what would be the most significant 3. And I do that by giving everybody on the planning team 3 stickers. You may have seen those dots that you use on certain files, or maybe you've been to a garage sale and you see where people put the price of the item on these stickers, and people would come on down and they would put 3 stickers next to 3 areas that they believe represent the most significant opportunities. And then the last part of the external analysis is the threats. In other words, what do you believe may threaten or challenge your organization? What factors may impact your customers based on what you learn from the external analysis? And once again, identify and agree upon your significant three. Once you've done the external analysis, you move to the third step. So if you're following along, this is on the next page in your workbook, where you identify internally some performance measures. You take a look at the satisfaction level of your customers, your financial condition, as well as your employee satisfaction. From that, then you summarize with your major strengths and weaknesses. So let's take a look at those components. First is a look at satisfaction. Many of you, I'm curious to know if you are currently asking for feedback from both customers and your employees. If you are, that's wonderful. My work, a lot I've mentioned that I've been in healthcare, and they are now mandated by the federal government to conduct a survey to their inpatients. Many of you, maybe if you've been a patient or two, have been asked for feedback. And that is because they are tying the results of those survey questions or results to their reimbursements. So it truly is a now pay for performance. However, if surveys is something that you've not done and you would like some assistance with, that's something that Inspiring Solutions can help you with. We can help you with the design of the questions. We can also help you with the administrative piece of it. It could be done as a paper survey, or it could be done electronically if you have their emails addresses. The reports will come back and it'll identify your most important areas from their perspective, and as well as your areas for improvement so that you can refine and increase their satisfaction. From a financial perspective, you might create or report out your annual or your budgets. So it could be anything from your balance sheet to your income statement, creating a budget. I always like to try to incorporate the strategic planning process into your budget process. Another component of your internal analysis might be taking a look at your products and your services and find out what areas you need to improve, reduce or eliminate, what might you need to expand or even start or develop. And I would again encourage you to ask not only your customers but your employees for feedback or direction. And again, this can be something that could be reported on an annual basis. Once you've then looked at all of the internal analyses, you'll summarize with your strengths, which describes what you do better than your competition, and what you feel you do that brings in excellence. And once again, you can agree upon your most significant three as a planning team, referring to, again, another question off of your pre-planning questionnaire. And then the strengths and the weaknesses that would then complete your SWOT analysis. Weaknesses are those operational problems that you're having, or maybe it's causing you or your customers frustration. And once you've done that as a team, you'd agree upon your most significant three. And then the last step in phase one, which identifies or describes where are we now, is the strategic issues. So if you're following along, jot that as the last step in this phase, where you look at the business life cycle, and I'm going to talk about that more on the next slide. You identify with a fair degree of confidence your future assumptions, and from all of that, then you summarize with no more than top 10 strategic issues that reflect on your key conclusions from your SWOT analysis and future assumptions. So let's take a look at this business life cycle. This is a model that you may have seen before, where in a period of time, whether it's months, weeks, years, it's not reflected here, your business will produce a degree or a volume of outputs. And you'll see during the first phase, or the growth phase, there's a large increase in outcomes because you're just launching. You're launching a new product, you're a new business. And in time, it doesn't again imply what length of time, it will mature. Your product will mature in the marketplace. You may saturate the marketplace. You can look at maturity from a team perspective. Maybe a team that's worked together for a while develops a rapport, so it reaches a more mature relationship. And then without any intervention, in time, your business will suffer a decline. And I say suffer a decline. That means that when your products or service become out of date or obsolete, it's no longer sought after. Maybe from an employee perspective, your team loses its excitement. Maybe it's not as effective as it once was. But however, you could avoid a decline by intervening with a rejuvenate. You'll see a rejuvenation illustrated right kind of at the stage of going from maturity and decline. However, it can happen anywhere along the business life cycle. It's an intentional effort that an organization or a leadership team makes to reinvigorate its team, its organization, in a variety of different ways, and one of which typically I find is through strategic planning. So I have the team indicate where it feels it's at. It comes up and each individual puts a dot somewhere along the business life cycle, and it's a great opportunity to have a dialogue as to why people feel the way they do. And then the last part of this step is to identify what are some of the assumptions you feel will be a factor within your business. Things that will change, things that will increase, things will decrease or remain the same with a fair degree of amount of confidence. Putting all of that together, you are then ready to summarize with your top strategic issues. And what this does, it boils down a focus from all of your analysis to date into a list of no more than 8 to 10 areas of the business that builds upon the strengths, overcomes the weaknesses, pursues its opportunities, addresses its threats, and considers the assumptions. And it's been a trend to have no more than 8 to 10, primarily because less is more. You don't want a long list of areas to address. You want to have an overall strategic focus from which everything that you do fits nicely into. So let's take a look at the next phase. The next phase is where are we going? So on a pyramid, we're going up the next level. Using what we've learned in the where are we now phase, we're going to move on to step number 5. And that is to formulate your mission and your vision. Those are two very distinctive statements. The mission, first of all, identifies what you do, who you serve, and what makes you unique. On the other hand, the vision describes what's your desired future and how would you like to be recognized. So let's take a look at both. Can anyone state from memory your mission statement? I usually always ask groups this question, and I say that I will honor them with a prize because I find so many employees, leaders, do not know what their mission statement is. And I believe that that's important because if you don't know what you are expected or hired to do, how can you do a good job? And I commend the police department because I think the police department does a great job of not only communicating internally what their mission is, but they have communicated to us, their consumers, that their mission is to what? Serve and protect. A mission statement should be a single statement, easy to understand and memorize, describes the business, who you serve, and has focus but still allows some degree of flexibility or adaptability, and does a good job of distinguishing you from the competition. As I mentioned, Inspiring Solutions practices what it preaches, And each year we revisit our guiding statements. And I will say through the years, this mission statement has changed, not significantly, but I will say that when I first started my business back in 1991, it was called the Trainers Group because I primarily was focusing on just training. But through the years, through organizational development, I have broadened my scope of work to strategic planning, to administering surveys, even helping with orientation process. So our mission to date is to enhance individual team and organizational performance by providing a variety of quality products and customized services. Each of those words were intentionally selected and has great purpose and direction for our business and decisions that we make on a regular basis. Joel Barker, who is a strategic planner, does a lot of work in the area of paradigm shifting, and he has a quote about the power of vision. Vision without action is merely a dream. Action without vision just passes the time. However, vision with action can change the world, and I really believe there's great power in having a clear vision. So what is a vision statement? Like a mission statement, it should be a single, easy to understand and memorize statement. However, it should be stated in future terms. In other words, we will should be the first two words of a mission statement or a vision statement. It should be used to describe how you would like to be known as or for, and how you would like, if you would like, to be recognized in your company, community, state, area, or the industry. I always say the best question to ask to test a well-written vision statement is the same question that kids ask parents while on vacation, and that is, are we there yet? Because if you can say, yeah, I think we are, then it's not a stretch of a vision statement. Our vision statement is that we will be nationally recognized as an invaluable resource for talent development. Now, I will say in some aspects we have achieved. We are focused merely on talent development. We want to be people's invaluable resource. In other words, we want them to think first and foremost of inspiring solutions. However, we've got a lot of work yet to be nationally recognized. So that gives us our stretch. Step number 3 is the philosophy formulation. Now, this is a little bit different than the mission and the vision. It might not be a statement. It could be some phrases. It could be single words. A lot of times it's single words that describe your values or your promise to your stakeholders. Stakeholders such as your customers, employees, vendors, or community. And the way that you create a philosophy is to think about what are some of the words that you would like people to live by or to work by. And our philosophy is that we believe quality is whatever the client says it is. Through ongoing relationships with our clients, we help clarify their situation and recommend a solution to meet their needs. We will honor that with honesty, integrity, respect, quality, flexibility, and compassion. And we use this not only when we're hiring, whether it's a full-time employee or whether it's an intern. We use this to start our meetings to make sure that we are reminded of what's important to us and our promise to each other. So to kind of summarize, the guiding statements of an organization include a mission that defines what you do, who you serve, and distinguishes you from others, a philosophy that describes how you will treat people, stakeholders, and then the third is the vision statement. And again, this is a single statement but should describe a desired, recognized future for the business. Once you have them, you need to make sure that you use them. So we talk about in what ways are you using these statements on your website or in marketing materials. In what ways are you informing your employees when you're hiring or selecting, when you're training or providing orientation to new employees? In what ways as managers are you using these statements to manage or coach or even recognize employees? And once you have those, you move on to the last step of the second phase, and that is to develop a strategic profile. This is where you will go back to those top strategic issues, and you will rank those, or you'll prioritize those in order of importance. Not saying they wouldn't all be addressed, but because you have limited time, limited resources, and there might be a sequence that you want to follow. And then for each of those strategic issues, you will put together a list of 3 to 5 measures, and we'll talk more about those here in a minute. You'll identify an action plan that has some how-to steps, and then to help guide or implement these steps, you'll be putting together a team of champions or volunteers or leaders within your organization that can actually follow through with the action plans. As I mentioned, each year we revisit our strategic plan, and last year, or currently, our top 5 in priority order is, first of all, our relationship with Wiley. Wiley continues to be one of our significant stakeholders. They are the publishers and producers of the Everything Disc, e-learning, and other online assessments. So we were focusing on increasing our product sales over the past year. We also, as a new team, Dana's been with me now coming up on 2 years. We also hired a summer intern. Wanted to focus on our team's effectiveness by honoring both our personal and professional needs. Third, we recognized we wouldn't be a business without our customers, so we wanted to focus in on our relationships and serving them to the best of our abilities. Fourth is our niche industry. We do most of our work in healthcare. Not to say that we don't work in other industries, but that's the 80-20 rule, where 20% of your clients come from 80% of your industries. So that's probably our 80% rule. And then our unique brand is attitudes based on my book, my videos. I've got an activity binder. We really spend a lot of energy revitalizing our attitudes in the workplace brand. As far as measures of success, each area or each issue will have a number of different measures that you will track to know how well you're progressing in the area of quality, satisfaction, volume, profitability, employee engagement, or growth. Then, once you've completed that phase, you move on to the third phase, which is how do we get there? There are 2 steps in this process. Step number 8 is the strategic plan rollout. Once the planning team has completed the plan, it needs to be shared with and understood by others. So depending on the size of the organization, you might think about having a presentation to all your employees, ask for their ideas, launch your project teams to get them involved in actually creating or finishing the plan, and like I mentioned, incorporating those actions into your budget. And then step number 9 is, once you have your plans, you need to implement them, taking action on whatever steps you've identified in the appropriate time frame. I usually like to ask at the end of the 2 days I usually spend with the planning team, what do you think are realistically going to be the greatest obstacles in implementing your plan? And notoriously, time is one of the greatest challenges. And so we talk about, all right, if that's going to be a factor, in what ways are you going to address or overcome that particular obstacle? And a lot of it comes from an intentional schedule of following up and monitoring the progress. So during this phase, you also share the responsibilities. It can't just be leadership's responsibility for the plan. It's got to be owned and shared and understood by your entire organization. Because accountability matters, you'll want to make sure that you've got point persons involved in keeping the components of your plan moving forward. That's where, for instance, in our business, Dana manages the product line, and I tend to manage the training and the strategic planning, the service line. And then the last phase, where are we now, also reflects the last step. And it's an ongoing question, how are we doing? By monitoring the progress, so again, turn to the next page in the workbook, you are going to be taking a look at in what ways are you going to have people intentionally monitor how you're progressing. We use and create a dashboard, no different than a scoreboard of a football team or a baseball team or a basketball team. This is posted in our work area to, at a glance, indicate our score. In other words, and it's hard probably to read that, but for each of the issues, you can see there Wiley and teams and customers, we have some very specific measures that we use to use as a baseline, as well as our year-to-date progress of our goals, and then what percent are we achieving that particular goal. And we revisit that and update that on a quarterly basis. And I want to reach out and thank Dana because she's the one who keeps all of those numbers current. So to think about how you're going to intentionally monitor your progress, I have you think about in what ways can strategic planning be on an agenda of your leadership team meetings or board meetings or quarterly team meetings. At a minimum, in what ways might you have a mid-year review or a progress report so that everybody is responsible for indicating what they've done and what they have yet to do? And then, obviously, I'm hoping that once you commit to strategic planning, it just becomes the way you, on an annual basis, update and refine your entire business plan. I also want to give you an idea of how a strategic plan might be created. We pride ourselves in letting our clients have or articulate their plan on one sheet of paper. It takes both sides, but the core is on one page your guiding statements, which is your mission, vision, and values. And then on the back side, and again this changes each year, are your top strategic issues. So give that to basically every employee if you give that as part of your rollout so that they know at a glance what are the overall issues affecting the organization, and as decisions are made, they understand and can support it because it supports the strategic plan. Beyond the core, the next section are the details. The details primarily reflect for each of the strategic issues your objectives and your short-term goals and action plans. So this is really more of what I call the operational aspect of your strategic plan. And then the last section of the plan document is the appendix, or what we call our external and internal analyses. This is where all of the either the reports, the information you were looking at, the SWOT analysis, all of those things that you did to kind of get to where you're focused are reflected. And if you ask us to facilitate the strategic plan for you, we actually will take down all of the flip charts and create a Word document and give it to you for your strategic planning purposes so you can keep it up to date on an ongoing basis. All right, so that describes the overall strategic planning process and its steps. What I hope I've done is given you some benefits to doing strategic from a company perspective. I know as a business owner it helps give me clarity and focus. I think that our customers benefit from it because we create a better experience or a better product for them. As an employee, I could only hope that Dana and my intern, Sarah, feels as though they have a voice in the direction of the company, and I think anytime an employee feels as though they have a voice, they're much more committed and can follow through with the action. As a manager, if you're a manager or a leader, I would think that this would give you more clarity as to what's expected of you and your department. And I think overall, as an organization, your reputation can improve because you're more efficient and more effective. So where do you begin? A journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. So let me give you a couple of ways to get started. On the next couple of pages in your workbook, you'll see what we give our clients as a starting point to gather documentation. Now, I'm not one that says we have to produce and kill some trees and creating a lot of documentation, but I do believe it's important to start with knowledge. And if, for instance, you have any member of your planning team that is new, maybe you have a new board member, maybe you have a new senior team member, presenting or sharing this information can be a great educational opportunity. So we take a look at, do you have a strategic plan? When was the last time it got updated? If you don't, then we're starting from scratch, which is fine. Do you have guiding statements? In other words, do you have your mission, vision, and values? Are they current? Do they need to be updated? And then from an external and internal analysis, you might put together some information about your competition, the market, the economics. Again, like I mentioned, you might be interested in learning about how your customers and employees feel using a survey or satisfaction tool. Management performance, board of directors, how efficient or effective are they? Taking a look at, and I fully disclose the financial reports of our business. I think that I've got to help my employees care not just about what's coming into the business from a revenue perspective, but I also want to make sure that they are aware of the cost of doing business. And then the next piece of that is to take a look at the agenda per se. So again, I pride myself in getting the pre-planning questionnaire to be administered at a minimum. We can do that for you. We'll do it as either a paper exercise or as a Survey Monkey tool given to at least the planning team members so that they can give honest feedback without fear of intimidation or sharing it in front of others, as well as getting a jump start on some creative thinking. We will summarize the results of all of the feedback, and it helps to accelerate feedback not only from the planning team, but from others that weren't in attendance for measures of success, your strengths, your weaknesses, your opportunities, and your threats. What products or services should be improved. And like I mentioned, we will summarize or compile the data, putting a number in parentheses next to any similar responses so that you can start to quantify that more than one person feels a particular way. And what's nice about it, it gives everyone a voice or a chance to express their opinions, and it's anonymous without judgment. And then the last page I want to give to you is a sample of a 2-day pro-treat agenda. I pride ourselves in not belaboring the strategic process. I know that some organizations, I'm even on a board where the strategic process happens over a series of months. And I think, gosh, by the time you finish the plan, things have changed so fast that it's outdated. So I usually ask for a typical 2-day, it could be simultaneous or maybe there's a break in between, but in typically a 2-day time frame, I can get a planning team through the strategic planning process, whether we're starting from scratch or whether we are refining a strategic plan or guiding statements. So if you want additional information, or if you want to talk about scheduling a pro-treat, please reach out to us. We have a strategic planning handbook. It's $10 you can purchase for yourself or for your entire team if you wanted to try to go it on your own. We also, whether we help you with strategic planning or not, can help you with the survey design and administration for employees and or your customers. And we're here for you, whether you're interested now or whether it's later in the year. Please let us know if we can help you in any way. I give to you a closing quote from John Naisbitt that says, "Strategic planning is worthless unless there is first a strategic vision." And I hope that today, this hour, has given you a vision or the value of strategic planning for your organization, for your business, department, or even just for yourself as a leader. And as I mentioned, when you fill out the evaluation, Dana will follow up with you and give you a copy of a recording of this webinar. So if you'd like to have anyone else listen to it who wasn't able to join us, you can. And she's also going to send to you a program description of the Strategic Planning Pro Treat. Different than the one you have, it'll talk about what is the value and what is the process for organizing a Pro Treat with your planning team. So once again, we announced the upcoming webinars done twice a month. February 16th is the date for our next month's webinar, Confidence with Conflict, and I think as I mentioned, this is going to be teaching a new everything DISC productive conflict profile, so we're really excited about that since conflict continues to be one of our most requested areas for employee, team, and leadership development. And just know that your participation in giving us feedback matters. We take your comments and suggestions seriously to improve this process or learning experience, as well as to make plans for the second half of our calendar year. So this concludes this month's webinar. We thank you for joining us, and on behalf of Dana, Sarah, and myself, we thank you for joining us, and have a great weekend, and look forward to future opportunities to work together. Bye for now.